You're now watching Wayback Wednesday, sponsored by Davenport Auto Park, the ride of your life. And also sponsored by Flores Glass, serving the area since 1977 with residential and commercial work.
Oh, and Merry Christmas, friends. Well, not Happy New Year yet, but Merry Christmas for sure. Hope you all are having a great holiday season so far. And I do wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Got a lot of ground to cover tonight. We're going to move kind of quickly. But I got a couple thank yous I want to send out before we even get started. Last week, if you remember, we talked a little bit about the Bluebird taxi stand. We talked a little bit about a fellow named Sam Mallison. And we talked a little bit about a place called Duke's Luncheonette. And so I made it a kind of a project, if you will, during the last 7 days to see what I could find about all three of those topics. And I found some really neat pictures, but I had some really neat pictures sent to me too. So first of all, I want to thank Wallace Abernathy and Randy Harrell for sending me pictures that I'm going to share with you tonight. I said before, this show wouldn't be the show without you, the viewer, and your participation. Both your viewership and sending me ideas and sending me pictures and keeping me on my toes. So I sincerely appreciate all that. And it's my pleasure to be with you each week. I put an awful lot of hours in preparation for this show, probably more than I should, frankly. But it's when I get started on this stuff and I start digging, I find myself ended up in sometimes what I call a rat hole or a rabbit hole. It just goes on and on and on. It's very easy to do when you're researching stuff that goes back 100, 125 years or so. And when you're looking at some of the topics that go back as far as some of these that we're going to cover tonight do, sometimes the information that you uncover is contradictory. You may see one source that gives you one path. Okay, well, this is the way it was, or this is the truth, if you will. And then you'll see another path or another document that says, well, wait a minute, maybe that's not accurate. Maybe this is more accurate. So anyway, with all that being said, we had a viewer a couple of weeks ago ask about the Bluebird taxi stand. And so I went through my pictures, and I've got thousands. Last count was over 6,000 pictures. But I did not, I guess I didn't search properly because I couldn't find any with Bluebird taxi stand. But Wallace sent me a really neat picture, and once he sent me the picture, I did some more looking, and lo and behold, I found that I had the picture he sent me, and I found the original source of that picture. And so I need to also thank Miss Monica Fleming. For those who are not familiar with Monica, she's written, 3 or 4, maybe more, really wonderful books about the history of Rocky Mount, Nash and Edgecombe counties, Rocky Mount as a whole, eastern North Carolina, covered a lot of ground, and just some really great articles and old pictures and so forth. But anyway, Lee, let's go ahead and jump right into this. Item number 1, this is a picture of the Bluebird taxi stand from early 1950s, I'm going to guess 1953, 52, somewhere along in there. And if you remember, we talked last week about trying to figure out roughly where it was. We knew it was in a general area of the city lunch. There was some confusion about exactly how close it was to the city lunch, whether it was adjacent to it or a little bit further south. But this picture, once we get up on the screen, it removes all doubt because it's very clear in this picture where the Bluebird taxi stand was in relation to the city lunch. And for those that remember the city lunch, it was, I have some vague memories of it. I seem to recall going there with my father on occasion or two. I was very young. And so it wasn't a place that I frequented very often, but I had been in there. And so the Bluebird taxi stand, honestly, I don't know if it was, there you go. This picture actually appeared in a book, one of Monica Fleming's books, that covers Nash and Edgecombe counties and Rocky Mount in several sections. It even goes out and talks about Spring Hope and other communities around. But as you can see, Bluebird taxi stand was literally right next door to the city lunch. If you remember this building, we'll show you another picture here in a moment that kind of gives a better view. But this was kind of a pie-shaped building. It was narrow on the right-hand part of the screen. It got wider as you're going toward Marigold Street. And of course, it faced the train tracks and Main Street down there. But as you can see, the Bluebird taxi stand was literally adjacent to the city lunch. They were literally, the buildings were touching. They were side by side. And the caption there says, two of the popular eating establishments downtown Rocky Mount were privately owned restaurants, both located on Church Street. Central Cafe was one we talked about in past shows, located on the corner of Western and Church Streets across from the First Baptist Church. Fed most of the employees and customers in downtown Rocky Mount for more than 40 years. The city lunch shown here was known for the best hot dogs in town. It closed around 1990. Okay. All right, so when I saw this picture, I wondered where it came from originally. I mean, obviously I found it after Wallace sent it to me. I found it in some of my photographs, and then I found it in the book that Monica Fleming had put out. I'm almost certain it was probably done by Bugs Behringer, though it really could have been Killebrew too. It could have been either one of them, frankly. But anyway, let's move on, Lee. Item number 2. This is another picture that was actually in the Rocky Mount Telegram, and it was also in one of Monica's books too, I found. So item number 2, if you would, Lee, let's get that up on the screen for our viewers. In 1942, January the 22nd, in fact, of 1942, there was a train derailment in downtown Rocky Mount. And this is a picture of that train derailment. And actually, the angle of this photograph was taken from roughly the train station, maybe the YMCA, that general area down there. But you're looking roughly northeast across the railroad track, across Main Street toward Marigold Street. And of course, on the right-hand side of your screen there is the City Lunch building, and right beside it, just to the right of it, is the taxi cab building, the Bluebird taxi cab building. And so, like I said, the buildings were adjoining. They were literally side by side. And so an interesting thing about that building where the taxi cab stand was, if you look on the right-hand side of that building, you'll see that the top of that building, other than the little front part lip that sticks up on the front and the part that sticks on the back, it's a straight line across there. But Lee, if you would go back just for a minute to that previous picture, I just want to show the difference here. I'm not sure when this change occurred. If you look down the right-hand side of that building, you see there's like a section of the wall at the top there has been torn out on the extreme right-hand side of that taxi stand building. It looks like they knocked part of the wall out above the ceiling level. I'm not sure why that was, but you can see it here in this picture. Okay, Lee, now let's go back to item number 2, picture number 2, and you'll see that knocked out place, for lack of a better term, is not there in the picture. You got a pretty good view of it right there, and you see on the right-hand side of that building, that hole is not knocked out. So I'm not sure if there was some kind of construction or some kind of accident or something, or I don't know, but in any case. So, like I said, I knew that this train derailment happened in the 1940s. This picture, actually, as I said, it appears in Monica Fleming's book. And so then I went to the Rocky Mount Telegram to see if there was maybe a better image or any decent image that was maybe a little better than this. As it turns out, there wasn't. But I did run across the actual article in January of 1942 when the train derailed. Lee, if you would, let's put up item number 3 for our viewers. And this is the actual picture and the article that appeared in the Rocky Mount Telegram, January the 22nd, 1942. There you go. Picture quality is really kind of grainy, and it does not, in this picture anyway, it does not identify who the photographer was. In 42, I don't think Charlie Killebrew was here then, so I'm almost certain this would have had to have been Bugs Behringer that took this picture. But anyway, the caption reads, crowds gathered throughout the day to view the overturned ACL locomotive number 1803, which was derailed at 11:50 last night when it sideswiped a northbound express train. The engine pictured above was hauling a train of freight cars as it approached the switch at Marigold Street. The trains, both headed north, sideswiped at that point, and the engine and 4 cars of the passenger train were slightly damaged. Wrecking crews were kept busy today attempting to right the overturned engine and derailed tender. This morning, 2 cables on the Florence crane snapped under the strain of trying to pull the tender back onto the tracks. part of this thing got cut off here. Anyway, it goes on to say, I'm not sure what this is. There was some kind of misprint here in this caption, so I won't try to go any further. It's kind of garbled down here at the end. But anyway, this is obviously not a better picture. I was hoping there'd be a little better image of the city lunch and the Bluebird taxi stand in this picture, but obviously it wasn't. So lastly, while we're on the topic of the Bluebird taxi stand, Lee, if you would, item number 4. This is a relatively modern picture. I'm not exactly sure. I went to Google Images, and I can't remember if this was 2008 or 2012, somewhere along in there. But it is a screenshot of the building as it appears today. Number 4, if you would, Lee. And this, as I said, is the building. There you go. And again, here you're looking roughly northeast on Main Street, looking toward Marigold Street. And you see there the pink part of that building is the old city lunch location. The gray or bluish gray to the right. And can you zoom out, Lee? I think if you zoom out, because it appears to be zoomed in on now, part of the right-hand side of the building is cut off. See, can you zoom out a bit? And it may show a little better view of the taxi stand itself. In the picture I've got in front of me, and I printed out these all before I came to the station tonight, so the one I'm holding in my hand looks a little different. It looks a little bit like it's more from a wider view, maybe. I'm not sure. Is it not letting you zoom out? Okay, well, if it won't do it, it won't do it. But anyway, the bottom line is the Bluebird taxi stand, as I said, was adjacent to the city lunch up until 1990 when it went out of business. Okay, so again, we talked about this Duke's Luncheonette last week briefly. And there you go, that's what I was trying to see. There you see a little better shot of that on the top of the building, on the blue on the right-hand side, the taxi stand building itself. You see where there's that dip, if you will, where like something they knocked out part of the bricks. For the life of me, I can't imagine why that would have been. Oh, we got a call. Hello, caller, you on the air? Hey, Bob. Bob, are you there?
Good evening, Randy.
Hey, buddy, how are you?
You didn't mention the fact that there was a railroad track on the back side of the Bluebird stand.
I was just getting ready to mention that spur track, but you're exactly right. It is. It runs just behind that building there, and part of it is still there, in fact. I've been out and seen it with my own eyes. Yep.
That track would go on down north to serve a couple of furniture stores.
Right.
But I noticed on your picture the city lunch had some advertisement that was sponsored with the Coca-Cola and also Pepsi-Cola. It reminds me of the day, back in the day, you go to a restaurant and they'd offer both Coke or Pepsi. It's not quite as frequent nowadays.
Absolutely. You're exactly right. Yep.
And I recall the Roller Champion flower. That was on one of the brick buildings, a painted billboard.
Uh-huh.
That was a brand of flour my mother used when you bought flour about 20-pound bags and cooked biscuits 3 times a day. I don't know if it was the Roller Champion or my mother that made the best biscuit.
Hard to beat a homemade biscuit.
And a good show tonight.
All right, buddy. Thank you. Have a good evening. Okay. All right. So anyway, like I said, I was hoping we could kind of nail down where the taxi stand was, and I had a viewer, as I said a few weeks ago, to ask me so I could find a picture of the Bluebird taxi stand, and I'm just sorry I couldn't find it sooner. But thanks again to Wallace for sending me the picture, and then, like I say, once he sent me the picture, I did another search on my computer, and lo and behold, I found I had it already. So okay, let's move on, Lee. We're talking about the Duke's Luncheonette, and I was trying to find out where it was. And so I did some digging, I always do. I went back to my sources, if you will, the newspapers.com website, the Rocky Mount City directories, and went all the way back to 1930. And what I found was that the Duke people, Mr. and Mrs. Duke, before they got into the luncheonette business and running a restaurant, they were actually running a newsstand downtown Rocky Mount, and in fact had a little set up inside the Rick's Hotel at one point. Item number 5, if you would, Lee. This is an excerpt from the 1930 Rocky Mount City Directory. and it's just a little blip there that shows. Now, oh boy, can we zoom out of that, Lee? I'm not sure why when I do these screenshots of these, there you go. When I do these screenshots of these city directories, for some reason, sometimes it blows up very large when I get them here and they get into the station's equipment. But in any case, if you look there at the top, you'll see Ms. Nettie Duke ran the Duke News Store and also had the Hotel Rick cigar stand. You see the address there, home address anyway, is 734 Sycamore Street. And down below, it shows Mr. and Mrs. Nettie Hardy and her husband, Hardy Duke. I said Mr. and Miss Hardy. Mr. and Miss Duke was a lady, and it was Nettie and Hardy was a husband and wife. And like I said, I had a newsstand downtown Rocky Mount and a cigar shop there in Rick's Hotel. So this is 1930, okay? So let's move on, Lee, to item number 6. By 1934, they had expanded their little enterprise. This is a listing from the 1934 Rocky Mount City Directory. And as you can see at the top there, Mr. Duke Hardy, his wife Nettie, now had Duke Luncheonette, the Duke News Store, the Rick's Hotel cigar stand, and of course they're still living at 734 Sycamore Street. Now, if you'll notice what I've got underlined in yellow there, this is the first real hint that I was able to find where the Duke Luncheonette was located. And you see it says North Raleigh, opposite East Thomas. Okay. Now, if you remember from previous shows, Raleigh Street, actually part of it is now referred to as Discovery Street. That's the street that runs along beside the old R.M. Wilson, old Rocky Mount High School, and crosses over Marigold Street a couple of blocks south, a little further than that maybe. But in any case, so when I saw this North Raleigh, opposite East Thomas Street. Okay, I said, okay, now we're kind of zeroing in on where the Duke Luncheonette was. All right, Lee, let's go to item number 7 then. The 1936 Rocky Mount City Directory. Boy, there we go, blown up again. There we go. It shows a Duke Luncheonette, Ms. Nettie C. Duke, North Raleigh, southeast corner of Thomas Street. Okay. So I said, okay, now we're zeroing in. We're kind of getting a really, really close idea of where the Duke Luncheonette itself was. Now, a couple things to keep in mind here. It says North Raleigh Street. That was the address of the restaurant. It doesn't give me a street address, but it says it was on North Raleigh Street. And there was a corner, the southeast corner of Thomas Street, okay? All right, so we'll get to that in a moment. I'm going to come back to that address, that Raleigh Street, Thomas Street. But before I do, I was really surprised to find, in my mind, I envisioned this place to be something like a Mayberry diner. You know, maybe it had 2 or 3 booths, maybe a couple stands at a little counter, a couple of stools at a counter. I did not anticipate a place that would be big enough, for example, to have live entertainment. But lo and behold, Mr. and Ms. Duke did indeed have live entertainment. Item number 8, if you would, Lee. July 16, 1937, there was an ad in the Rocky Mount Telegram, and you can zoom in on this, Lee. This little ad here, Count Milgram and his orchestra featuring Flea Battle and his clarinet will play at Duke's Luncheonette every Sunday night for the remainder of the season. This ad appeared July 16, 1937 in the Rocky Mount Telegram, as I said. And of course, we've talked about Count von Milgram many times on the show. And so I was really surprised to find that he and his orchestra, that's I don't know how many, I'm guessing 6 or 8 guys, but that's a pretty good size outfit there, played inside Duke's Luncheonette. So it must have been a pretty decent size. Okay, so let's move on then, Lee. Item number 9, fast forward to 1940. And this is from the Rocky Mount City Directory from 1940. And it shows Duke Hardy and his wife Nettie still running the Duke Luncheonette. And it gives an address here for the first time. I found an actual address, 561 North Raleigh Street. Okay, so the restaurant has not moved, but this is the first, there you go, this is the first place I found any kind of street address. So when I went looking for 561 North Raleigh Street, number one, it doesn't exist anymore because Raleigh Street became Discovery Street, at least this section. And the street numbers themselves changed as well. At least I think they did. When I tried to coincide addresses from modern day Discovery Street and 1940s era Raleigh Street, I had a really tough time trying to get those addresses to match up and jive. So in any case, but now we've got an address. What did I say? 561 North Raleigh Street. Okay. So, and I'm going to come back to this in a minute too, but keep in mind, addresses in Rocky Mount that run east to west, Main Street, Franklin Street, Washington Street, typically the odd numbers are on the east side of the street, even numbers are on the west side of the street. So if the street runs roughly east-west, like Main Street, for example, or Church Street, or Franklin Street, or Gray Street, typically what you're going to find is that on the west side of the street, those addresses are all going to be even numbered. And on the east side of the street, those addresses will all be odd numbered. So using that mindset and that philosophy, if you will, 561 North Raleigh Street, that's address listed here in the 1940 city directory, would put the restaurant Duke's Luncheonette across the street on the east side of Raleigh Street, which is currently Discovery Street. Okay. All right, we're going to come, the reason I mentioned all this street address and so forth, I'll get to that in just a minute. I stumbled across this next listing here, an ad, March 8th, 1941. It came up when I did a search of Duke's Restaurant, number one, and so that's how I came to discover this particular ad. But I got to tell you, I was really blown away by the number of restaurants that were in operation in Rocky Mount, in the city, because this is the Rocky Mount Telegram, so some of these may be outside the city limits. But in any case, item number 10, I'm sorry, Lee, if you will put up item number 10 for our viewers. And this was the sanitary inspection rating for area restaurants. And the headline reads, Eating Places Receive Rating. And I know you can't see this on your screen. Lee, feel free to zoom in on this if you want to. But I'm just going to read down the list here. This is, I did total, I forgot what the total was. Anyway, New Rick's Coffee Shop, in the Rick's Hotel, of course, Rocky Mountain Mills Canteen, Liberty Cafe, COD Drugstore, Mrs. Vine's Tea Room, Saunders Drugstore, Streetcar Lunch, New York Cafe, Cozy Lunch, Busy Bee, Melton's Barbecue, Miller's, Hicks Drugstore, Matthews Drugstore, Rocky Mount Cafeteria, the Royal Palm Cafe, Thomas Cafe, Smith's Cafe, Matthews Bun Drug, Union News Company, Krispy Kreme Donut Shop. Who knew there was a Krispy Kreme donut shop in Rocky Mount in 1941? There was. And it goes on. Wright's, Parker's Hot Dog Stand, Coastal Restaurant, Palace Restaurant, Hardy and Robertson, that was the old hot dog stand on Falls Road. Charles Store Lunch, City Lunch, Cokie Road Shop, Pete's Luncheonette, Duke's Luncheonette, of course, Atlantic Grill, Coney Island Lunch, Futrals Cafe, Manos Cafe, and then there were listings for colored eating establishments. That's the way they're listed in this ad, colored eating establishments. Whitfield's, Brooks, Red Cross, Dixie, Fab's, and Pete's. So, long story short, there's a whole bunch of restaurants in Rocky Mount in 1941, many of which I'd never heard of. Some of these I remembered, obviously, and some were still in existence when I came along, but many of these I'd never heard of before. And of course, Duke's was amongst them. All right, so getting back to the street address and so forth, put up number 11, if you would, Lee, for our viewers. This is actually a snapshot, if you will, of the general area where I originally thought Duke's Luncheonette must have been located, based on that earlier description of Raleigh Street and the southeast corner of Thomas Street. So what you're looking at here, that's modern day George Street to your left there, Raleigh Road to your right. Thomas Street comes in at the curve right there, and that little tan building, I thought, well, that must have been where the Duke's Luncheonette was located. But on the way to the studio that night, I got to think, I said, you know what, it couldn't have been there, because on that side of the road with the Raleigh Street address, that would have been an even numbered address. So now I believe that Duke's Luncheonette was located directly across the street from this little tan building right here on Raleigh Street, or George Street as it's now known. And that's the closest I can get as to where Duke's Luncheonette was. It was in this general area right here, but I believe it was across the street. So anyway, and I just realized we blew right past our first commercial break. So Lee, let's go ahead and take that commercial break now. When we come back, I got a couple of closing comments about Duke's Luncheonette and the people who ran it, and then we're going to get into another topic altogether. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more Wayback Wednesday.
Today, having the right healthcare plan tailored to your specific needs is vital to your peace of mind. The question is not if you will need the coverage, but when. And when that time comes, you want to be prepared. With the rising cost of medication, medical procedures, and doctor visits, you should know which is the right insurance plan for you. From life insurance, affordable health care, to Medicare, there are a lot of insurance options available, and choosing a plan can be overwhelming. Having Gus Tullis as your insurance professional on your side will give you peace of mind, because you will know you are covered with the insurance that meets your needs.
Hello, my name is Gus Tullis of Gus Tullis Insurance, and I've been helping people with their insurance needs for well over 20 years. Call me today. I'll answer any question you have. 252-937-6913. Looking forward to hearing from you.
I'm Daniel Moss, owner of Cornerstone Funeral Home, and I'd like to invite you and your family to give our family an opportunity to serve you in your time of need. And we offer a full line of funeral services, everything from visitations to graveside services to cremations on site with a live crematory, as well as a banquet hall to meet the catering needs of our families that we serve. We offer catering service. We offer refreshments prior to visitations and services of our family. And we want to invite you to come and experience the difference here at Cornerstone Funeral Home.
There's a main nerve that leaves your back that goes into your hip and goes down your leg. It's called the sciatic nerve. A back injury can put pressure on that nerve, causing pain, numbness, tingling. Chiropractors can actually help that. At the Hammer Chiropractic Center on Sunset, we know exactly what to do. We have very good relationships with the doctors in Rocky Mount. We like to co-manage people's care. Some medications may help us do our jobs, and our jobs may help their medications work better.
And we're back. At the top of the show, I mentioned that we had a couple topics we're going to cover tonight, and the Bluebird taxi stand was certainly one of them. Trying to nail down where Duke's Luncheonette was another. And by the way, before we get away from the Duke's Luncheonette, I did a little more research on Mr. and Ms. Duke. Couldn't find much on them other than their obituary. Lee, if you will, just go ahead and put up 12 and 13 for our viewers. Ms. Duke died March in 1965. Her husband died in October of 1975, so he lived another 10 years after she passed away. She was actually from Pitt County, it says here. They had been in Rocky Mount for a total of 58 years when she passed away. Doesn't give very much. There's her obituary right there. Like I say, she was 67 when she passed away, and it was just not a whole lot about either one of them on a personal basis, other than the fact that they ran the restaurant as well as the newsstand and the cigar stand in the Rick's Hotel. And then number 13, Lee, I'm sorry, this is his obituary. He was 79 when he passed away in October 1975. And again, apparently he had been in a nursing home in Tarboro for some time. But you know, they had a pretty successful run in business for a number of years in Rocky Mount. Interesting that they went from running a newsstand and a cigar stand to running by all accounts, a pretty successful restaurant for a number of years. I'd love to have been able to find a picture of the Duke's restaurant, and I'm not giving up that there may be one out there somewhere. But so far, I've not been able to find a picture of the Duke's Luncheonette, I should say, not restaurant, but luncheonette. Even though it was a restaurant, it was known as the Duke's Luncheonette. Okay, so we talked last week about Mr. Sam Mallison. And if you remember, Sam Mallison was from Rocky Mount, went to school here and then left and made his fame and fortune literally all over the country. He lived in New Jersey for a while, Pennsylvania for a while. He was a newspaper man. He was at one time one of the authors of a local newspaper column here called An Old Reporter, and just made many friends that apparently were lifelong friends. And so if you remember, we showed a picture of his graduating class from Rocky Mount High School in 1909. So then the question came up, well, where was the Rocky Mount High School in 1909? If you recall, before Rocky Mount Senior High School that opened up in 1953 over off Tillery Street and between Tillery and Hammond, that area over there, that school opened up in 1953. Prior to that, Rocky Mount High School was over on the corner of Marigold Street there, between Marigold and Hill Street, and that building wasn't there in 1909 either. So the question became, where was Sam Mallison's high school in 1909? So I'm going to tell you, that led me on a path that really twisted and turned, and I learned more about old schools in Rocky Mount than I ever really probably needed to know. But anyway, it kind of helped cement some things in my mind too that maybe some of you still had some questions about too. We've talked about these old schools in Rocky Mount several times over the last few years of doing this show. We talked about the East School and the West School and Edgemont School. And so what I found, I think, was pretty interesting. So before I get into the pictures, I just want to read a couple of things here. I found, many of you are familiar with the Wikipedia website. They purport to have a pretty fair, and I'm not sure how accurate they are all the time, but they at least attempt to provide some pretty good history. So this little short blip appeared at the Wikipedia website when I did a search for Rocky Mount High School. It said public education in Rocky Mount began in 1901. High school programs were established in the following years, but did not have their own building until 1915, when the high school department of the Rocky Mount Graded Schools for White Children took over Edgemont School on Cokie Road, and it became Edgemont High School. Okay, so prior to 1915, there was no Rocky Mount High School in Rocky Mount. There was a Rocky Mount class, a high school class, obviously, because these kids had gotten that far in school, so they had achieved and attained the level of a high school senior. But there was no, high school for them until 1915, when the old Edgemont School became known as Edgemont High School. I'd never seen Edgemont School referred to as Edgemont High School until I saw this article today. That's when I first saw this. So then I found another article talking about the Edgemont School, and I'm just going to read a little bit of this. This is a pretty detailed article. I'm just going to read a bit of it here. And it's talking about the Edgemont School. It says, in the years just prior to our country's entry into World War I, a new school building appeared on Cokie Road in the residential section known as Edgemont. Elementary students occupied the first floor of Edgemont Graded School. The high school department, formerly housed at East School on Raleigh Street, occupied the second floor. So when this school opened, and I've seen a couple of conflicting dates, but 1914 I think is pretty close to when this Edgemont School was built and opened up for business, if you will. So what it's saying is the high school department formerly housed at East School on Raleigh Street, which would later become the old Rocky Mount High School. It says formerly housed at East School on Raleigh Road, occupied the second floor. So when this school opened, the high school was given the second floor of the building as their domain, if you will. It says in 1927, upon the completion of a large brick addition, East School was renamed Rocky Mount High School, and the Edgemont and East School students exchanged buildings. Okay? So in a nutshell, prior to 1927, the high school students, if you will, they didn't have a school of their own. They were located on the second floor of the Edgemont school building that opened up in 1914. Okay, so, you know, we're still after the time when there were the 1909 graduating class would have graduated. We're talking about 1914 here with Edgemont School, okay? So I did some more looking, and the combination of things and digging and looking through, again, Monica Fleming's book. She's done a wonderful job of backtracking these old Rocky Mountain schools and kind of putting some information out there. Let's put item 14 up on the screen for our viewers, if you would, Lee. This picture actually appears in Monica's book about Nash and Edgecombe counties. And I'm going to read the caption here. It says, Rocky Mount Graded School, built in 1901, was the first public school in the area under the program of Governor Charles Aycock. This school would be known as Old West when they completed the Old East School in 1908. Okay. This building was condemned and demolished in 1939, and the new school was built in its place, was named James C. Brazel Elementary School. So this was the first school built in Rocky Mount right here in 1901, and it was the first public school in the area. It would later become known as Old West School when the Old East School would open in 1908. Okay? All right, so let's move on. Keep that in mind. The Old East School opens in 1908. All right, item number 15, Lee. This is a picture I found in the collection of John Taylor's old postcards. And some of those are online. We've talked before about John Taylor's massive collection of old postcards. And this is one from that collection. And it is the Rocky Mount Graded School. It was built in 1901, and this is actually, this picture has been, I've seen it in several different areas, different publications. It's in Monica's book, for example. But in any case, this is a school that was built in 1901, torn down in 1939. And by the way, this school was operational up until it was torn down. We'll get to the details about when it was torn down and so forth in a minute. But so I went looking to see what I could find. I did a search for high school yearbooks. And so I stumbled across this article, number 16, if you would, Lee. This was entitled Public and Non-Public High School Magazines Founded Since 1900. And lo and behold, about 2/3 of the way down the screen there, you see in 1907, the Blackboard from Rocky Mount High was the name of the high school in Rocky Mount. But now keep in mind, this was a magazine. It was not a yearbook like the High Knocker would become in later years. This was a magazine, an actual magazine put out by the high school department of the school then. And I just realized now it is time for our next commercial break. So let's go ahead and get this one on time, Lee. Let's go ahead and roll that commercial. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about these schools and where Sam Mallison actually went to high school at. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more Wayback Wednesday.
Today, having the right healthcare plan tailored to your specific needs is vital to your peace of mind. The question is not if you will need the coverage, but when. And when that time comes, you want to be prepared. With the rising cost of medication, medical procedures, and doctor visits, you should know which is the right insurance plan for you. From life insurance, affordable health care, to Medicare, there are a lot of insurance options available, and choosing a plan can be overwhelming. Having Gus Tullis as your insurance professional on your side will give you peace of mind, because you will know you are covered with the insurance that meets your needs.
Hello, my name is Gus Tullis of Gus Tullis Insurance, and I've been helping people with their insurance needs for well over 20 years. Call me today. I'll answer any question you have. 252-937-6913. Looking forward to hearing from you.
I'm Daniel Moss, owner of Cornerstone Funeral Home, and I'd like to invite you and your family to give our family an opportunity to serve you in your time of need. And we offer a full line of funeral services, everything from visitations to graveside services to cremations on site with a live crematory, as well as a banquet hall to meet the catering needs of our families that we serve. We offer catering service, we offer refreshments prior to visitations and services of our family, and we want to invite you to come and experience the difference here at Cornerstone Funeral Home.
There's a main nerve that leaves your back that goes into your hip and goes down your leg. It's called the sciatic nerve. A back injury can put pressure on that nerve, causing pain, numbness, tingling. Chiropractors can actually help that. At the Hammer Chiropractic Center on Sunset, we know exactly what to do. We have very good relationships with the doctors in Rocky Mount. We like to co-manage people's care. Some medications may help us do our jobs, and our jobs may help their medications work better.
Okay, we're back. Still tracking down where Sam Mallison would have gone to high school in 1909. And like I said, when I was going back through looking at all the information that was available to me through the newspapers.com website and Rocky Mount City directories, sometimes there was conflicting dates about when a building was built, for example, or when it transferred from one status to another, from elementary to high school and so forth. But main thing is, we need to know right now, in 1901, the school, the graded school, if you will, was the school in Rocky Mount. It was the only school aside from at that time, what was called the colored school. We'll get to that in a minute too. That was Abraham Lincoln School over on Gray Street. I mentioned this Blackboard magazine that was in publication in 1907. And as I said, it was a magazine. It wasn't a high knocker like yearbook, for example. But I found one. I actually found a copy. I think it only ran for 2 years, and I'm not sure how many. It was supposed to have been an every month publication. I don't think it happened that often, and I don't think it ran more than a couple of years at most, if it even ran that long. But it was a pretty neat little magazine. So number 17, if you would, Lee, put that on the screen for our viewers. This is the front cover of the 1907-1908 Blackboard magazine that was published by the high school department of Rocky Mount Graded Schools. So again, this is 1907, 1908. You see at the very top there, it's got the years that this thing was in publication, and it says there at the bottom, published by the high school department of Rocky Mount Graded Schools. So what that tells me is that the high school was a class, of course, a department, if you will, as it says here, that was in the graded school. So Sam Mallison would have gone to high school at the graded school, most likely. This magazine, like most magazines, had feature articles, had advertisements. I didn't look through the whole thing, but I mean, several pages, 30 or 40 pages in this magazine. Item number 18, if you would, Lee. This was the Christmas edition, by the way, that appeared, again, 1907. And up at the top, it lists the business managers. It says published every month by the high school department of the Rocky Mount Graded Schools. But again, I'm not sure that it was on that regular basis. But it lists the business managers, it lists the staff, and it lists, price there. Subscription was 50 cents a year. You could buy single copies for 10 cents a year. And down below there are the lyrics to the Christmas carol, O Little Town of Bethlehem. And so I went on through and just pulled at random a few pages out of this this Blackboard magazine and shared them with you tonight. Lee, number 19, if we could. This just caught my eye because, number one, it was a photograph from 1907. Now, that was really kind of rare around these parts. Certainly there were photographers around and people could take photographs. So it's not unheard of to have a photograph from 1907. But this picture appeared in the 1907/1908 issue of the Blackboard magazine put out by the Rocky Mount High School Department of the Graded School. And its advertisement here, Griffin's Drugstore. Doesn't give an address. I'm not sure exactly where Griffin's drugstore was, but this is a shot inside the drugstore. When I zoom in on it, it looks like an old, something you'd see in the late 1880s, early 1900s. It's an old apothecary, drugstore, glass cases and so forth. It's a neat old store. Number 20, Lee, if you would. This is another ad that caught my eye for a couple of reasons. Number one, they put two ads on one page on this next one, number 20 here. The Rocky Mount Furniture Company, we've talked about that before. That's up at the top, and it's turned sideways. And down below is an advertisement for Dowdy and Lancaster furniture store on Washington Street. Remember, we talked about Mr. W.R. Lancaster and his other partner, Mr. Battle, a couple of weeks ago. So it looked like Mr. Lancaster was in business with more than one partner over the years and advertising in the Rocky Mount High School Blackboard magazine in 1907. Okay, Lee, let's move on. Number 21. This was another ad that appeared, and I got a chuckle out of this. This was advertising Kaiser Drugstore, of course, in 1907, 1908. And Lee, if you would, zoom in on that section there where I've got highlighted in yellow for our viewers. Kay Kaiser had a radio station, not a station, but a radio show that got started in the late 1930s, 37, 38, somewhere along in there. And it was called Kay Kaiser's College of Musical Knowledge. And the K in his name, of course, was spelled with the letter K, as it should have been, as well as his last name, Kaiser. But the word college was also spelled with a K. And so that was kind of his shtick, if you will, that any word that had a C in it, he would replace the C with a K. And here you see they were advertising corn cure and cold cures, both should have been with the letter C, and they've got them spelled with a K there. 10 cents for the corn cure. So if you had corns on your feet, for 10 cents, Kaiser Drugs could fix you up there. And if you had a cold, for 25 cents, they had a cure for your cold. How about that? Modern medicine still doesn't have a cure for the common cold, but Kaiser Drugstore did in 1908. Okay, let's move on, Lee. Item number 22. This was come from the Rocky Mount City Director, this next item here. Oh, there we go. It's all blowed up again. And I brought this out just to kind of reinforce what we talked about earlier. This listing, as I said, is from the Rocky Mount City Directory. And if you recall, 1908 and 1909, the Rocky Mount City Directory combined those 2 years into one city directory. So what you're looking at here is a listing under public schools. And you see the Rocky Mount Graded School, Pearl Street near Nash. Okay. W.D. Gresham was the principal. Colored Graded School, Gray Street, the corner of Gay. That Colored Graded School, again, was the old Abraham Lincoln High School. It got torn down many, many years ago. But the Rocky Mount Graded School, 1908, 1909, was the only other school in Rocky Mount. There was a Nash County Public School on Nashville Road, Raleigh Road, and then the Rocky Mount Township Colored School. But as far as Rocky Mount City, in the city limits of Rocky Mount, there was only one school. And again, that's Sam Madison had to have attended high school, with his high school years anyway, at the Rocky Mount Graded School, which, refreshing, was the school over on Pearl Street that was torn down. It was built in 1901, torn down in 1939, replaced with the James Craig Brazel's Elementary School in 1939. Okay. Number 23, if you would, Lee. This is a one-line listing I found also, interestingly enough, in the same 1908, 1909 Rocky Mount City Directory. And it was a separate listing, which I found odd. There we go. And you see it's referred to as the Rocky Mount New Graded School, Raleigh Street between Hill Street and Marigold Street. Okay. Now, what's in the white section down below was an edit I put in myself, just my own references. But this, of course, was in 1927 would become the Rocky Mount High School. And, of course, in 1953, when the Rocky Mount High School moved over to the new Rocky Mount High School, Rocky Mount Senior High School, this school would become R.M. Wilson Junior High School. So this was the new graded school that came along sometime in the 1908, 1909 time frame, because it appears in the 1908, 1909 Rocky Mount City Directory. Now, why they didn't list this with the other school listing, I do not know, but it was a separate listing for the new Rocky Mount graded school. And this, of course, as I said, this would have been the school. And I suppose it's possible, I'm going to throw this out as only a possibility, since this ad appeared in the city directory, I guess there's a possibility that there could have been a high school class at this school, though technically it was not Rocky Mount High School until several years later, 1927 to be exact. I still think it's pretty safe bet that Sam Madison in the 1909 graduating class was most likely at the old graded school, the one that was over on Pearl Street that later was torn down and became Brazel School. Oh, we got a call. Let's get this call. Hello, caller, you on the air.
All right, well, you're showing that listing right there on the screen right now, R.M. Wilson Junior High School. A lot of people take the wrong notion that R.M. Wilson was R.M. stood for Rocky Mount.
And it did not. You're exactly right. It did. I've got the man's name. We'll get to it shortly, but you're right. It was not Rocky Mount Wilson. It was a gentleman's name. In fact, I've got his name in my notes here. We'll get to it in a minute, though.
Bye.
All right, buddy. Thank you. Okay. All right. So I mentioned earlier that going back through these old schools and trying to sort them out, when they were built, when they were torn down, when they were changed from one to another, got kind of confusing. But in the end, I think I was able to sort them all out. Number 24, if you would, Lee. I found this. I think this is another listing from one of Monica's books. I had it in my collection of pictures. But it was simply, can we zoom in on that, Lee? A little bit too far. Zoom back out a bit now. This is a comparison, if you will, of the two schools from roughly 1915. On the left-hand side would have been the East graded school, built in 1908. It became Rocky Mount High School in 1927. And as I said, R.M. Wilson Junior High School in 1953. On the right is the West graded school building, built in 1901, demolished in 1939 to make way for the James C. Brazel Elementary School. So these are the two schools. And there's a lot of similarity between these two schools and the Edgemont School. We'll show you a picture of Edgemont in just a minute. But keep in mind, these schools were all built within 10 years of each other. 1901 for the East School, 1908 for the graded school. Oh, I said that backwards. 1908 for the East School, 1901 for the West graded school, in 1914 or thereabouts for Edgemont. So, but the construction was very, very similar. Number 25, if you would, Lee. This is a picture of Edgemont School. And I found this in a little segment and a little brief history down below. It says the Edgemont School building housed Rocky Mount High School prior to 1927 and the Edgemont Graded School from 27 to 53. When the Edgemont Graded School was renamed Gorham School to honor its principal, Ms. Fanny Gorham. So again, the architecture here is very similar to all three of these buildings. A lot of the same type building attributes we're seeing in all three buildings. Number 26, Lee. This is another postcard from John Taylor's collection. This is roughly 1915. And of course, in later years, Edgemont School would indeed become Fanny Gorham School. And then much later than that, it would become the Rocky Mount Judicial Center as it is today. I found actually two photographs, or two postcards, I should say, of Edgemont School that were in John Taylor's collection. Number 27, if you would, Lee, is just another postcard in this collection that John Taylor had over the years. And you see it says Edgemont High School, Rocky Mount, North Carolina. And I said this is the first time I'd ever seen Edgemont School referred to as Edgemont High School. Okay, number 28, Lee. In 1923, the sophomore class, not graduating class, but the sophomore class of Rocky Mount High School had this picture made, and it's just a neat picture from 1923, and I just love the opening here, the front door of this school. This is, of course, the Edgemont School, same one, but this was, again, not technically the Rocky Mount High School, but the Rocky Mount high class. You see there, this actually says the high knocker. It does refer to this thing as, the image has been reversed here, but on the right-hand side, it does say high knocker. So it's kind of a little bit of a discrepancy there, but in any case, this was from 1923. Speaking of the high knocker, number 29, if you would, Lee, Rocky Mount High School, 1927 high knocker, had this picture on the front of the cover. And of course, this is the school we just talked about a few minutes ago, that from 1927 up until 1953, it was the Rocky Mount High School. And then when they built the new Rocky Mount Senior High School, this school transitioned over from being a high school to R.M. Wilson Junior High School. And I think we're going to run out of time before I get to the man's name. So let me just fast forward here and we'll find that man's name because I have it. The man's name, well, how about that? His nickname was Mac. So I'm not sure maybe Robert, but I thought I had his whole name here. But Eric was exactly right. R.M. Wilson did stand for a man's name. Let's real quickly jump to picture number 30, if you could. This is the article that was in the Tug. I'm not going to read it, just kind of give you the headline here. But in 1938, December 13, 1938, the headline reads, West School to be razed, new building will go up. This is when they made the announcement that the old school on Pearl Street would be torn down and replaced with a new school. Number 31, Lee, 1939, it says construction starts Monday on another large project, that of a new school in the site of the present West School. After the present building is torn down, DJ Rose and Son will begin work lasting on through the fall. It'll cost $70,000. It took them a while to get started. Once they made a decision to do what they were going to do with the old West School, it was some months went by before they actually demolished the school and then began construction on the new school. Number 33, Lee, it's probably the last one we get to tonight. It's a really terrible picture. I do apologize, but I found this picture in the Rocky Mount Television. September 20th of 1939. That's a picture, item number 33, if you would, Lee. This is a picture of construction going on the new J.C. Brazel or James Craig Brazel Elementary School. And it just says, work is progressing rapidly. The foundation has been laid and brick masons are now working on erecting the walls. The new school will cost about $80,000, expected to be completed by February 1. Okay, so there was a couple more items I got, but we are out of time, unfortunately. So I think we've answered the question fairly as best we can anyway about where Sam Nelson went to school. As I said earlier, there's a lot of history in Rocky Mount education, Rocky Mount schools, these old buildings. It's a shame that they all can't still be with us. I'm glad to see they turned the old Rocky Mount High School / R.M. Wilson Junior High School into a retirement home. They've turned, of course, Fanny Gorham School into the Judicial Center. It's a shame they had to tear down the original graded school and the Abraham Lincoln School on Gray Street, but sometimes progress demands that old things get torn down. So that's going to do it for us tonight, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great week. Take care of yourselves. Have a very Merry Christmas and be kind to one another. We'll see you next week with more Wayback Wednesday. Good night.